which is gonna be very nice. Psychic type's kind of interesting because it's, no offense, kind of boring, which sucks. But there is some stuff I need to go over with it in comparison to other types. I've covered Dark and Ghost already, and the thing about Dark and Ghost is I think both of them are stronger than Psychic. Psychic's like right in between them in terms of like it's like it's really weird. You wouldn't expect it, but Psychic type is basically like normal type. It's right in the middle of everything. It has, like one or two weaknesses. Nothing crazy. Not really strong against anything. Master of none. Weak to not many things at all. Like it's just there, and it's not bad. And it definitely does have some moves that make it much more interesting than say, your normal like attack, like flying. Like flying's a really boring type, but like Psychic at least has some kind of diversity in it. But unfortunately, I think it's actually one of the few types that hasn't been experimented with like every other type. It's really weird. I wish Psychic got more type. I think there's been like it's almost been paired with every type nowadays, but it's kind of like one of those types you just add on just for the hell of it, like Dark. So this Pokemon looks smart. Okay, we'll just slap a Psychic onto it. It doesn't like define the Pokemon, sort of like fire, or like rock or ice or water. Like there's kind of like those types like make up what the Pokemon is. Psychic's kind of just there, if it makes any sense. Same with Dark. Dark examples would be like Crawdaunt and like, oh god, most of the Gen 3 Pokemon that are Dark. Shiftry is another one for like that. It's just they're just dark. They could have been like Psychic just as easily, and it wouldn't have really changed too much about them. Like you more identify their grass and water type to them. So what can we talk about in terms of Psychic type in general? First, we have to break down the two different periods of Psychic type there are. There is, oh my god, Psychic types in the game. Run from, like, run to cover because we're going to die. That period in time is just first gen. First gen, Psychic type basically ruined the game. It broke the game, first of all, but it ruined the game in many facets because it didn't have a weakness at all. It hit everything hard, nothing resisted it, and it would one-shot you, and it had Psychic, which was a really strong move back then. It's kind of fallen from grace now, but it had Psychic, and it was a TM that many Pokemon could just learn, and you would just like one-shot people. And the big thing was that it's your special defense and special attack did not get split, so Pokemon that had good special defense or special, for instance, Tentacruel like had really high special. Granted, he's a poison, so he got melted, but Tentacruel is actually probably a better Pokemon than you would expect in Gen 1 because its special stat total is like insane. Same with like Mewtwo, which probably was the best Pokemon in that gen. Executor is one of the best Pokemon in Gen 1. And then from there, Executor has not had the best of times, but you get my drift. Like Slowbro, amazing Pokemon. Jinx, all these Pokemon, you're like, wow, are they competitively good now? And you think to yourself, and you're like, hot damn, they're fucking terrible. So, what happened in Gen 1, or what happened to change that? Oh, I should mention too, Gen 1 also had a problem where the types that were good against Psychic type, which were Ghost and Bug, respectively, there was 3 Bug moves, I think, in the game, maybe 2. Like String Shot is like technically one of them, but there's like Twin Needle. That's it, and only one Pokemon could learn Twin Needle, which is not great. So that's one. And like Pin Missile, I think, is the other one. Those moves were good against Psychic, but only a select Pokemon could learn them, and they didn't do any damage anyway. The next was Ghost, and there's only one Ghost-type move in the game, and that is Nightshade, I think, and Lick. Yeah, so those moves don't do any damage either. One's like a 20 base power, and the other one is set to your level to do damage. And there's only one Ghost Pokemon, and the Ghost-type tree is Poison-type, so they would die. I remember in like Pokemon Stadium that like, you're like, wow, Gengar, like look at its moveset. It would have like Nightshade and like Thunderbolt, but like Gengar just gets like annihilated. Psychic just like one shots Gengar. It's pretty great. But people, I think, mistake when Gengar was actually good, and they're like, oh wow, Gengar is like a Ghost Pokemon in a Gen 1. Oh no, he's bad. He's bad. The period after that, Psychic becomes a little weaker. They added Dark type, they added Steel. Both of them resist or are immune to Psychic. That's another key part I'll bring up about Psychic once we get to more type talking, but they fixed that, so Psychic again got hit hard there. And plus, the type Psychic's really good against, I think it's fighting. We'll talk that more about that, but they basically fixed that by adding 2 types and kind of neutralizing Psychic down to not be the most broken thing in the entire series. Thank God, or else we'd be worshipping Slowbro right now, which would not be the most ideal thing to be, but you get where I'm going. So after Gen 1, let's talk about Psychic after this. So this is where we are now. Forget that Gen 1 actually existed. So it's half against Psychic and half against Steel. Like I said, Psychic is defensively and offensively right in the middle. It's just completely average, maybe even like worse defensively, because you could argue bug moves are not that hard to grab on. I think Signal Beam can be learned by a lot of things. Dark Pulse, like dark moves are pretty easy. Like a lot of things learn Crunch. Defensively, usually it's more well-rounded in special defense rather than defense. That makes a lot of sense. Same with special attack. Usually it has higher of each of those. So usually it's better offensively. Psychic's a really easy type to grab on in terms of a type move. However, it's really unfortunate because you're not grabbing Psychic moves usually just like to put on your Pokemon. So if I have a choice item and I'm picking a set of moves to like round out my comp, I usually go like, I really need a Psychic type to like fill it out. It's usually like a last resort option. Like I don't have any other moves, so I'll just put in Shy Shock or something like that. So Psychic's not like usually like one of the definitive like I need this move on my set. So it's pretty weak offensively. Usually you only get it if you have Stab, to be fair, or you need that specific type taken care of. Like you need a Fighting or Poison. Like you have no other answers for Psychic. So offensively it's not that great. It does hit. It has strong moves. I'm not denying that, but it just doesn't hit like Fighting and Poison. Oh, Poison's a really good type to hit now, but Ground is more easier to hit things with. And Psychic, it's good because Poison types are now a little more prominent than they used to be because Fairy's in there, so Poison types are a little better. So you might be needing an answer for them more. Fighting is also always nice to get. But fighting Pokemon are usually notorious for being bad defensively. At least then they're usually more offensive inclined. So usually you can just one-shot them with a special move anyway, a lot of the times. So it's usually not that necessary. And fighting types, like I said, they're not usually fighting Pokemon or fighting moves come from like non-fighting type Pokemon. So unless you're versing like a specific type, it's not as good as you would think to hit those types. Good types to hit. Not the greatest, though. And then it's weak to Bug, Dark, and Ghost. I already talked about this. Ghost you don't see that much, but you can usually like hurt Ghost just as far back, and usually Ghost Pokemon moves you don't see, but the other two are pretty more common than that. So defensively and offensively, it's kind of just completely average. I would say maybe a little less than average. It's probably one of the weakest types in the game. I think, like this even says it, defensive capabilities are poor. Usually don't use Psychic Pokemon for defensive purposes, which is, I think I mentioned this in the last video that I do. I have to do it, so I need some switches. You could have an all-offensive team, but that's usually not that great. I will say that the Psychic move pool is pretty good. It's probably one of the better ones in the game. It has a lot of options in terms of like support options. I think both screens are Psychic moves, so technically, and then there's definitely some status and item switcheroos things going on here, so we'll look at those when we get the chance. I wish there was like a better way to look at move sets, but physically it does have some staples. Zen Headbutt is notorious because although it is probably the best like physical access move in the game for Psychic types, the common one, it has a 90% accuracy, which actually is pretty annoying. It only does like I think like more than like an Ice Punch, like 5 more damage. Pretty frustrating. Trick Room sets are very common. Usually I think Psychic is one of a few types that can learn Trick Room, so that is a note for Psychic types to put a cap in their hat or a feather in their cap. There we go. Phrases. You can learn Teleport, which is not useful for battling, but Trick is a move I commonly use a lot because it's just I think it just adds another mind game to it. Ooh, psychic mind games. Ooh, like I said, reflect and light screen I believe are psychic moves. Rest I don't get. I mean, I'm not gonna put that as an advantage towards psychic. Every Pokemon can learn that. Shy Shock is a very common move now because it attacks defensive. So if you go against a special wall or something Calm Mind stalling you, it's nice to have, and then you'll hit whatever it is on their opposite end of their defensive tree, which is handy a lot of cases. So, like, imagine how many things would be better if they learned Psychic Fangs instead of Zen Headbutt. But that's the specific Pokemon moveset. Psychic is like the bread and butter Psychic move. It is the Ice Beam. It is the Thunderbolt. It is the Surf of this gen, or not gen, this type. It's always reliable. It does what it needs to do. Hits hard. Oddly enough, don't usually see it because usually Psyshock is more popular. I don't know if that's always the case, but I see it more often Psyshock rather than Psychic. I don't see many Psychic moves in general, but it's pretty vain to have a move named after your own type. It'd be like water, just like, use water! Like, okay, dude, thanks. The Pokemon gets confused and runs into itself and then hits itself in confusion, and you're left wondering, wow, this guy's an idiot. You look here. Gravity. Dream Eater no one uses. Calm Mind stalling is very common. Psychic type Pokemon can usually Calm Mind stall. A lot of other Pokemon can, but Calm Mind is making your Psychic or your special type Pokemon more special and just really hard to deal with. If they get Calm Mind and you don't have an answer for them, that's pretty frustrating to deal with. I will say that. Cosmic Power is the same way. Not many Pokemon can learn it, but I really like it. Although you don't usually need both your defensive stats boosted. So, yeah, as you can see, a lot of these booster stats, like Amnesia and Barrier, raise your special defense and defense. So, lots of stat moves, and you got your bread and butter physical move and psychic or special move, so that's good. As a well-rounded move pool, no complaints, and they're very easily accessed by a lot of Pokemon. It's easy to just be like, give me that fucking Psychic, or give me that Zen Headbutt is a very common move to get. Whether or not you want to use that move, that is a different question. But all in all, Psychic type, like I said, there's nothing to write home about. It doesn't have, like, I don't think it has the uniqueness that Ghost has. It also is, oh, I didn't mention this. It doesn't hit Dark types. Dark types are immune to it. And Ghost, like, has the same problem with in terms of normal, but Dark doesn't. So that's why I think Dark takes out the edge in terms of it beats Psychic. And Ghost is a little different. I think it hits more things neutral than Psychic does, and it doesn't have as many weaknesses. But, like, why would you be Dark? Why would you be Psychic if you can be Dark in a lot of cases? Like, yes, you're weak to fighting, but which is actually okay. I shouldn't like just write that off, but you get what I'm saying. Not being able to hit Dark-type Pokemon, although there are not many defensive Dark-type Pokemon, so it shouldn't matter. And there's not many Dark-type Pokemon in the meta, but just usually you want to avoid using moves that Pokemon types are like immune to. Like Psychic and Ghost are probably not that common because it's not the only reason, but obviously there's an added focus that, like, if you use this move, we'll just get, like, immune damage. And that wouldn't be great. Usually if you want, like, if your fourth move in your set, so you have a bunch of strong stabs, you have your Thunderbolts, you have your Ice Beams, and then you have your stabs. So say it's like Blastoise. We'll use that as an example. I know it can't learn all three of those moves. Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Surf. Those are your three moves, right? And you're like, wow, I need to finish something for my choice specs, or I need, like, a move. I have a Life Orb. I want another, like, move to round off my pool. Well, why would you choose Psychic when it can get? I mean, it's a strong, like, move. Don't get me wrong. When you can use, like, something like a taunt or something to help you set up with, like, your sweep, help you set up or give utility to your team. I think those are more common to take than just slapping on Psychic unless you're choiced. But even then, like, I think Bugs are, like, a better type to attack with. Like, there's so many other types that you can just grab, or, like, if you can grab Dark over Psychic, I would choose it. So I guess that's my point. If usually Psychic is the fourth, like, move you pick on a set that's not a Psychic Pokemon. So why would you ever like choose? It doesn't have like you're kind of just throwing it on there just to throw it on there. That's my point with Psychic, and that's my point with most Psychic Pokemon. I like the type a lot. I think a lot of Psychic type Pokemon are cool. However, I can admit that it does have significant flaws. So we'll talk about what's in the meta, and then we'll talk about my team. Because you're not going to see many Psychic type Pokemon in the meta, I don't think, in OU at least. And I say, you say that. So when I talk about types, you do see a lot of megas that like say if Pokemon's bacon. 600 base stats is nothing to write home about. Fast, hits hard, boom, and it has trace too. Let me look here. Other than that, is there anything else? Latios, yeah, Latios is a borderline uber Pokemon in terms of its stats. Very good. I don't think it's like picked because of its Psychic type, so. Metacham's a nice strong mega. Mew can learn every TM in the game. It has really well-rounded stats. Usually stealth rocker, bulky, support kind of Pokemon. Tapu. Okay, Tapu is a notable example too. This one has Psychic Surge. So Tapu is a notable example of a strong Psychic type. Probably one of the best in the game. Because you don't have the Mega restriction. I see a lot of Tapus. That's probably the second most common Tapu for me. Coco and this one are pretty common. Is there anything else? Nope. Nope. So nothing too crazy. Nothing too crazy. But yeah, there's a common meta Pokemon. They all have their reasons for being there. 2 of them are Megas, and they have strong stats. Mew is just very good. This thing is also its base stat total. It's not. I don't think. Unlike a lot of Pokemon, I don't think it's the Psychic type that draws these into this OU bracket. For instance, I'm gonna try to use an example. Like these two are not. Like Skarmory's typing like single-handedly brings it into this. And I don't think that's the same for a lot of Psychic Pokemon that are in here right now. Maybe like this is probably more like thick fat, but like whatever. I guess it's really hard for me to word it correctly, but I don't think it's Psychic type that's boosting these guys in. I think if Mew was Dark type, do you honestly think it would still be in here? That's the question I'm trying to raise. And you could probably do that for a lot of Pokemon. It's kind of unfair for me to do, but it's my channel. It's my channel. Like, if Alakazam was Dark or Ghost, would it matter? Probably not. Probably not. Now, if he was Bug or something like that, maybe he'd be worse. Or if he was Rock, maybe he'd be worse. But Psychic, Ghost, and Dark are... You have all three of them are very similar, and they all have very slight differences that, like, change them. I don't think it's that much, like I think if Bisharp were Psychic Steel, I think it would be worse. I really do. I think Sucker Punch doesn't get stabbed, and like yeah, you don't have your fighting weakness anymore, but I don't know. Maybe it would be. I don't know if it would be better or worse. I don't know. Depends. I think the physical move pool of Psychic is worse than that, but anyway, that's mostly me talking about Psychic. I know I didn't really go too much about it. There's not much I can really talk about. I do have a lot of respect for the type. It dominated Gen 1, and that's one of my favorite gens. But by dominating, it made it really unfair. But right now, it just doesn't stand out. I wish it got something to help it more. Maybe a cooler like physical move, or maybe it can hit something harder than that. I don't know. I wish it got some kind of boost just to make it stand out a little more like Ghost. Maybe pair it with more types, but like even Fairy seems more like, whether or not I like Fairy type as it has its like a more it has like a well-rounded niche and reason for the meta the way it is, or in OU. So I just wish Psychic had a more defining characteristic. Even Normal has more of a defining characteristic, which is like it's flexible, or it's the king of adaptability, you know. So Psychic it's got some tricks up its sleeve like a magician, but hey, you find out the magician's a fraud in the end anyway, so We'll talk about my team. How I made this psychic team. So my team is pretty bad. I say that all the time. I think I say that